No one knows the exact moment when European history diverged from the rest of the world, only that after the fall of the Roman Empire, darkness did not descend all at once as later chronicles would claim, but arrived slowly, patiently seeping through ruined fortresses, fragile kingdoms, and broken laws. And within that vast emptiness, humanity encountered a terrifying truth, that faith, law, and steel, no matter how powerful, were not enough to hold the world together, and it was from that fear that an unspoken pact was born, a covenant never written in scripture or carved into stone. A covenant that allowed order to endure, but demanded payment in centuries of war, sacrifice, and deliberate forgetting. This covenant moved like a shadow across the continent, without a fixed form, preserved through ancient rites, cathedrals built upon precise foundations, and individuals chosen to bear the darkest burdens of history. And for generations, humanity learned to live within a world that was stable yet soaked in blood, until a figure emerged powerful enough to shake the entire system, and that figure was Charlemagne, the first ruler since Rome to unite Europe beneath a single symbol, and it was the moment he was crowned in Aachen that the ancient covenant began to fracture. For his authority had grown too vast to be sustained by darkness alone. From that night onward, Charlemagne dreamed visions that did not belong to him, cities not yet built, wars not yet fought, and a Europe collapsing into chaos should the covenant fully break. But unlike those before him, he did not surrender to fear. He asked a forbidden question, whether another path might exist, one that did not require the endless sacrifice of history itself. And with that question, the first fragile spark of light was ignited within a system that had endured for centuries. In Rome, the church sensed this shift and trembled, for it understood that the covenant could not be destroyed by force without unleashing uncontrollable darkness, yet it also knew that thought itself could no longer be contained, and thus the true conflict of this chronicle began, not between good and evil, but between stability sustained by sacrifice and hope for an order that no longer required darkness to survive. Within this struggle emerged Joan of Arc, not merely as a saintly warrior, but as the first voice of a different future. For the voices she heard no longer commanded obedience, they asked questions, asking whether humanity was prepared to bear responsibility for its own history. And when Joan led her armies, she fought not only for France, but for the belief that faith could exist without being upheld by innocent blood. And even when she was bound to the stake, her death no longer sealed the covenant, but tore it open. For the first time, a sacrifice weakened the darkness instead of strengthening it. In the east, Vlad the Impaler felt the change most intensely, as the seals beneath Wallachia began to fail, and he faced the greatest decision of his life, whether to remain a monster to preserve the old world, or to allow darkness to rise one final time so that it could be ended forever. And Vlad, remembered by history only for terror, chose the path no one expected. He shattered part of the seal and confronted what had been imprisoned for centuries, not to unleash it, but to destroy it, accepting eternal condemnation so that future generations would no longer live in unseen fear. In Florence, Dante Alighieri, who had glimpsed the darkest conclusions within the depths of thought, finally wrote what he had once concealed, not naming the darkness directly, but speaking of responsibility, free will, and humanity's capacity to save itself. And his words spread slowly, not as revolution, but as an underground current reshaping how people understood history. And so there was no apocalypse, no final annihilation as the old prophesies had foretold, for what ended was not the world, but a cycle. The ancient covenant dissolved not in thunder, but in silence, as humanity for the first time carried the full weight of its own destiny, and Europe endured. No longer protected by controlled darkness, but by memory, by awareness, and by the knowledge of what had nearly come to pass. The ending of this chronicle is not paradise, for war remains and error persists, but unlike before, history no longer needs to hide the truth in order to survive, and that is the most hopeful ending humanity could ever achieve, not because it became perfect, but because it finally learned to walk forward without darkness holding at hand.